All right, welcome back to the JFK Assassination Audit, video number 62. It's now 18 February, and I'm just going to stick with Mexico City for right now. Maybe Monday I'll switch back to the boring testimony of the witnesses, but right now I'm having a lot of fun in Mexico City. It's very, very fascinating, very interesting. I'm learning new stuff every day. I mean, essentially, Mexico City is the espionage capital of America into South America and the Caribbean. It's basically where everything starts right there. So today, of course, we're going to start off looking at the Vietnamese embassy. Now, back in 1963, of course, Oswald never would have visited this embassy, but it would have been most likely the North Vietnamese embassy. I don't know if it's in this same area. Maybe there was a South Vietnamese embassy that the Vietnamese took over. I don't know. Maybe they weren't even recognized. Who knows? But anyway, they have their own embassy. Now, a lot of these, just like in Los Angeles, a lot of places like in South America, you have the old core of the city here. Okay, here's the old section of the city, the center part of the city. And then as it expands out, you know, a lot of it's kind of the opposite of what it is in America, that the poor live in the city, the inner cities, and then the the middle class lives out in the suburbs. Well, it's the opposite usually in South America, that the rich people usually live in the center or live close to the center, and then the further out you get, the more you get like shanties and the poor and stuff like that, because the real estate's cheaper. It does reflect also that wherever there's hills, okay, usually that's where you're going to find the rich people in any city in South America, because they can gate those off, they can guard those, they get a little, you pay for the view, so the real estate's going to be a little more. So that's where we're finding the Vietnamese embassy, which is kind of unusual because Vietnam's a pretty poor country. But also you're finding the Iranian embassy, the Swiss embassy, all up in here in these little southwest hills, I guess you could say. And so we're going to take a God's eye view of their embassy. And again, we're just doing this for security, just to check them out, to show you what kind of security Oswald probably would have been facing. And it's going to be different or the same at most embassies. And you can see how the streets are, kind of curvy. When you ever get like little curvy streets like this, it's usually, much nicer neighborhoods and stuff like that. All right, so let's take a look. So, looks like you got a little park over here. And again, I was looking at this earlier, and anyway, so this kind of looks like it's a pretty damn big complex. Again, so we'll take a look at this. You can kind of see the outline of the property right there. Right here. You see how it goes like that. They've got like a little courtyard there. You can see they've got an entrance gate. There's another entrance gate there, it looks like, in some kind of open yard. They've got satellite dishes. This is probably part of their complex also. It looks like it's connected. Maybe. Or maybe that's another embassy. But anyway, let's take a look and see. Now, again, that the way the Chinese had theirs right on the street like that, that's really good for security and thwarting any kind of terrorist attacks. Actually, out in the suburbs like this is a good idea for a place too, because you're going to have more security. A lot of these areas in Mexico will have these gated communities, a lot of these in these third world countries, all the rich people will live like in a gated community. So they may have like gates here, gates there, some kind of booth that the security, that people will have to pass through security in their vehicles to get into the neighborhood. I'm not sure if that's the same way there, but it looks like something. All right, so let's take a look and see if there are any pictures from the inside here. Look, there's about 10 photos. And again, you're not going to have a lot of people from Mexico trying to transit to Vietnam to get visas for tourist visas, stuff like that. I mean, there's going to be some rich people that do business with Vietnam, stuff like that. There's going to be some businessmen. There's going to be some diplomatic stuff, but you're not going to have a lot of tourists from Mexico going there. But, I could be wrong. That's an interesting flag. I'm pretty sure that's Vietnam, and I'm not sure where that flag is there. But anyway, let's take a look here. So this looks like this is from the street. You can see they've got their gate here. Fence is pretty high. You see they got this standard concrete reinforced steel beam. So if anybody tries to punch through here, it's going to flatten out whatever blast they have. Again, Vietnam doesn't really have a lot of enemies except for China. I'm trying to think who the enemies, maybe Cambodia, maybe. Depends on the government there. The government now it's in power is kind of pro China, and it seems like they're basically just a colony of China. But again, China's not going to be sending people with car bombs to smash into the embassy in Mexico City of Vietnam, unless Vietnam does something just outrageous. That the terrorists, the way you have to look at terrorism used by nation states is that would be their last resort or their only alternative resort. Okay. Again, the United States is not going to use terrorists to attack another country. We're going to do it directly. China's not going to really directly attack anybody because they would get, they would have the full force of the United Nations and the United States on their ass. But you may have other countries supporting terrorists going after, countries they're at war with or at a proxy war or something like that. So, like, you may have Iranian, the Iranian Secret Service using terrorists like in Hamas and Hezbollah to attack countries like Israel. You may have other groups supporting like Kurds to attack Turkey. Just really depends. But Vietnam, I can't really think of any kind of enemies they're going to have that's going to want to attack them. Again, you could have a security guy up there looking down on the gate. That's pretty good, pretty easy to watch. Again, so what you'll see is as the level of the security threat level goes down, the amount of security, especially for like terrorist activity, goes down. You're not going to see as much. Like these windows are probably not reinforced with wire mesh or anything like that. And they've got like a little wooden, probably a heavy wooden door here. And of course they've got this standardized, this looks like concrete and brick here, but I guarantee you there's heavy steel girders inside there, buried inside there. Okay? Reinforced. There's the same gate again. Again, like I said, even though Vietnam is a communist country, they're not going to have too many enemies. And if they did, they're probably not going to go all the way to Mexico to hit them. They'd probably hit them somewhere in Asia. This must be like the ambassador from Vietnam. Again, it's a communist country. It's no different than China. Although don't tell the Chinese and the Vietnamese that they hate each other. but it's an authoritarian, totalitarian dictatorship. There's no free elections. There's no freedom of movement. You're not going to be able to say what you want about the government or in the press or about anything unless you have government approval. All right, so let's take a look at this street view. And hold on one second. Now, I came across this sign here. And let's see if I can get a clear view of it. I can't get a real clear view. And it says, it's not very clear there. Hold on one second. It's down here at the other end too, where it's clear. And it says, Embajada de la República Socialista de Vietnam no estacionarse se usará grúa. Okay, I didn't know what that means. I'm pretty sure it means don't park here, because this parking is for the embassy or something like that. But you never know. I'm not very good at Spanish. I looked it up on Google. Wait, hold on one second. I got the A. Let's see, that's maybe why it's coming up weird. Okay, so it says no parking is used our crane. So basically it means no parking. This is for the embassy. So don't park here. This is embassy parking. And so you can see it goes on quite a ways. You see how the wall is there. And this is what you want to do. You want to keep people out. So you've got bushes out about 6 feet out. You've got some kind of wire fencing, probably some kind of barbed wire. You got some motion detectors in there. And then you've grown some vines in there, so it makes it difficult to grab a hold of the fence. This makes it difficult to put a ladder there of any kind and to get over the fence. So we'll go down this way first. So it looks like all this is like embassy parking, I guess. And I don't know if it's for embassy staff or embassy employees, whatever. But yeah, see, it looks pretty big there. And then you've got this door, which is probably a private residence. So this is a pretty nice neighborhood. And again, this is what they do in these third world countries is the rich people, there's a very small percent, 1%, half of a percent, they're going to hide behind their walls and their security. And I guarantee you at night there's roving security all through here, up and down. They've all hired it, to keep the poor people, to keep the anybody out from fucking with them. You see, got these high walls here. So yeah, it looks like this is the end right there. I'm surprised there's not a camera. Oh yeah, that guy's got a camera, but I'm sure there's a camera up in there somewhere. But yeah, it's a pretty big complex. Let's take a look here. Again, this is going to be some kind of reinforced oak wood of some kind. I'm surprised, again, there's no pylons that pop up out of the ground. But, there could be pylons behind the door. Who knows? So this looks like an entrance door. This is probably not for serving the embassy there. This is probably just for employees. I'm sure they've got cameras all around here somewhere. You see how they've got, it goes all the way up. They got the spikes at the top there. Pretty good little setup. It's also aesthetic. It works for the neighborhood. It's not some big concrete security eyesore for the neighbors. Let's take a look here. There's another gate. This is an electric meter. Although, I don't think that all the electricity that embassy is running to that little tiny wire right there. I very much doubt it. But they've got a meter that the city can come by and at least take. They probably got underground electrical cables coming in, so it won't get cut off. And they probably got their own power generation also, in case the electricity does get shut down. And this is just a meter for the city guy to come by and read that. And then you've got the walls here. There's a Vietnam flag. I'm not sure what that flag is there. They got the little spikes there. Here's another door. This is probably the service entrance they got for cars, and then for passengers, civilians. You see they've got, what is this, some kind of electric wire? This is probably some kind of shock wire in case someone tries to hop up here and then hop over. They're going to have to get past this electrified fence. It's probably going to give them a bad day if someone is stupid enough to jump up there. So that's pretty good security, And so what you're going to have in all countries, in their equivalent to the like the U.S. State Department, you're going to have a group of guys that are experts on physical security, okay? And that's, walls and barbed wire fences and keeping truck bombs out and security cameras. I mean, it just stands to reason you're going to have somebody that's going to be in charge of that. And then you're going to have another team of guys that are going to be, they're the guerrillas on the scene. They're going to have the guns. They're going to come out, and if anyone tries to shoot up the place or whatever, they're going to be a counterforce to that. You see, they've got this. You see how they got this pretty smart here. So if anybody tries, hauling ass with just say one day somebody decides to bomb this embassy, okay? So they're going to have a big truck full of explosives, full of rocks, full of shrapnel, whatever, and they're going to punch through here. They're going to hit this car, and the truck is going to punch into this tree, and it's going to slow it down. And they may get up to the wall, but by the time they get up to the wall, the force of the vehicle they're using to punch into the wall and then blow up your explosive is going to be a lot lessened. It's going to be hard for them to get around this and then punch into that door. And there's probably some kind of reinforcement behind this wall. You can see there's some kind of wire mesh there too. And it looks like they got, cameras right there. But yeah, this is pretty typical. This is what you'd expect. And again, suburbs is a good place, especially if you don't have a lot of people going to console. So people are going to have to make a special effort to get out there. And I guarantee you there's no buses going up and down this road. Maybe on the main road they're going to have to walk back. So they're going to have to take a taxi. And so you're not going to have a lot of people there. Now, of course, the U.S. is probably going to watch Vietnam, but Vietnam's not really on the, I would say, just personal opinion, if you think about all the people we want to watch, is probably not on the high list. I'd say Vietnam is probably higher than Germany or Czechoslovakia or India, but it's not like Iran. It's not like, Russia or China on the watch list. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to have probably some kind of remote camera. They've gone to one of these rich people. Matter of fact, they probably, one of these rich people that lives here is probably related to the president or a senator or some shit like that. And they're going to say, hey, can we put a camera up in your house on your roof to watch the entrance? Or we're going to put it up by the telephone pole here, maybe. We're going to put a camera up just so we can see who's coming and going. Again, there's not going to be a lot of terrorists, a lot of Al-Qaeda's transferring, or ISIS people transferring through Vietnam on a tourist visa. Now, if it was like Indonesia or Malaysia, yeah, maybe, But I don't really see anything. Of course, you could have a guy out there. You could send a guy out there to pretend like he's fixing a sewage problem, on a day that someone's supposed to show up and be out there, snapping pictures away at people and stuff like that. Also, a sewage truck would be a good car bomb, especially this one. If you look at that, Look at this truck. It's full of sewage, which is ammonia, methane gas. Okay. Yeah, that'd be a pretty good one right there. You maybe want something a little heavier on the bumper, but you put a bomb in that, woo, that'd take out this whole block. But that's what you want to do when it comes to security, is to protect your staff. So keep them up in the building. Keep them up in the building up there. You got these high walls. They're going to block out any blasts, going to stop any kind of car bomb. They're going to be in some kind of, office back here. So, keep them protected. And again, you're going to have roving security with the Mexican police running through here, and they're going to be, looking for shit, Because again, you don't want the Mexican ambassador's office to get blown up by some fucking terrorist or whatever for one of your embassies that you're hosting, because you want them to extend the same courtesy and protect them at the same level of security that you're providing for them also, you see, in their country. But again, Vietnam, not really high on the terrorist attack list. ISIS is not going to be really going after Vietnam that much. Now you see right there's a little camera, and it's not pointed down. You see how it's pointed out? So that would be a perfect place right there. Or maybe put a camera in one of these trees, get you an infrared camera with a good microphone on there. That'd be a good little place right there. But that could just be his camera to look down on the street. Anyway, so we'll move on from this. Again, like I said, Vietnam's not on the high list against America. It's also not on a high attack list by any kind of enemies or terrorists or anything like that. I would have said maybe back in the 70s, you might have to worry about the Khmer Rouge, because Vietnam invaded Cambodia, and then they had the Khmer Rouge. They were up in the hills and stuff like that fighting the Vietnamese army. But nowadays, not so much. The main rival for Vietnam is traditionally their traditional enemy for 3,000 years is the Chinese. They've always been traditional enemies, but Chinese aren't going to be sending in car bombs to blow them up, unless like Vietnam shoots down some Chinese plane or some full of passengers or something like that. All right, so we're going to move on and get back to the video. All right, so we're going to get back into this really good podcast, Mexico Explained, Lee Harvey Oswald, Mexico City.
Oswald left the Cuban consulate and came back with the appropriate pictures at about 12:15 in the afternoon. He filled out all of the paperwork in Duran's presence, and then she explained to him that he needed to get a Soviet travel visa first.
Again, that's just extraordinarily fast, okay? So if you figure he got there at 11 o'clock, okay, no appointment, just walk in, you're going to be sitting for a while, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, stuff like that. And they're going to tell you to go get passport photos. Well, a lot of those places are around, up and down the street, but you're going to have to find one of them. You don't know where they're at. He doesn't know where they're at. So he's going to have to go look around for some Photoshop to take some photos. Back then, it's going to take a while to process the photos, 30 minutes or so. And then they're going to have to cut them out, and then you're going to have to walk back. So to be back by 12:30, so at 11 o'clock he gets there, and then he's sent out to get photos and be back by 12:30. Again, extraordinary fast. Extraordinary. I mean, I did the exact same thing, okay? I even had an appointment at the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, and I got there early that morning, 7 o'clock. My appointment wasn't until 9. When I got there at 9, there were probably 20, 30 people in there with me, and they went almost all of them ahead of me. And even though my appointment was at 9, I didn't see anyone until about 10:30. And that was just briefly out the window. Basically, I had lost my passport. And so I needed to get a replacement passport. And so, of course, they told me the exact same thing. You need passport photos. And I said, where can I get that? And they said, well, there's a place right across the street. So I went over there. They got the photos taken. The guy said come back in about 30 minutes or so. I went around, ate some lunch, came back. Even though I had an appointment at 9 o'clock, by the time I got back, got the photos, went over there, and got, attached it to my replacement passport application, okay, it was 1 o'clock, and none of that happened that day. It takes, a couple of weeks, they told me, and I said, well, I need my passport now, even though I was living in Israel, I was trying to get back. My mother was sick, okay, and so I paid for an express to get that back, but still that took about a week, and that is like in 2007. Anyway, all right, let's take a look here.
Before the Cuban consulate would issue the in-transit visa to get him to Cuba. On this, Oswald walked to the Soviet consulate and arrived at around 12:30. On arrival, he met with embassy worker Valery Kostikov, who had long been watched by the CIA as a possible KGB agent. Kostikov handed Oswald off to a man named Oleg Nechiporenko. Nechiporenko explained to Oswald that all travel matters to the Soviet Union are handled by the embassy of the country of the traveler's origin.
Duh.
Since Oswald was not a Mexican citizen, the Soviet offices in Mexico could not help him. He would have to go to the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C.
So that's standard bureaucratic stuff for making you run around your ass, okay? Again, that doesn't make any sense for Oswald to do that. He could have applied for a visa for the Soviet Union while he was in New Orleans back in July, okay? Again, it says either he's ignorant, doesn't know the process, or he's just being sent down there to shake up things, keep saying, I'm Oswald, I'm Oswald, I'm Oswald, or whoever it is, to let them know it's Oswald. So when they send back information, we're going to pick up how they're sending that and who they're sending it through, okay? That's all he's doing. He doesn't really care about getting a visa.
Oswald explained that he didn't want the FBI to arrest him for establishing contact with the Soviets, so he figured that getting a visa through Mexico was a better option. And, as previously mentioned, he wanted to make a stop over in Cuba. Nechiporenko explained to Oswald that they could make a special exception in his case, but the paperwork would take 4 months to process. This made Oswald very angry, so much so that Nechiporenko ended the meeting and escorted the American off the premises with no visa paperwork filled out.
So again, you got to think about, what are we dealing with there? Why is he getting angry? Okay? If he's just Patriot Oswald, he's been sent down there just to shake things up. It doesn't matter if he gets the visa. It doesn't matter if it takes 4 months. But if he's been told, hey, you might get a bonus, we may give you a bonus if you can, get this visa and shake things up for us down there, okay? Maybe the financial stress is what's getting him upset. Or, maybe he really wants to go to the Soviet Union and doesn't want to go back. I mean, think about it. He has no money. It's not like when he got out of the Marines. He has no money. He's been unemployed for 2 months. He sent his wife back to Dallas, and now he's trying to get back into the Soviet Union. He's just going to leave his wife and his pregnant wife and daughter there. It doesn't make any sense. I don't care how crazy you are. Familiar ties are going to be more important than any political philosophy you have in your mind. Okay? You may be pro-communist, but you're going to go get a damn job so you can feed your family and pay the bills and keep them off the street, no matter how unfair you think it is. Think about that. All right.
At around 4 p.m. that afternoon, Oswald returned to the Cuban consulate and spoke again with Sylvia Duran. He lied to her, and told her that there were no problems with his Soviet visa application and that they could proceed with his Cuban paperwork. Duran called the Soviet consulate to verify Oswald's story, and in about 20 minutes they called her back, confirming that they had not processed any paperwork for him and that a visa to the Soviet Union would take about 4 months to get.
There you go.
Sylvia Duran put down the phone and explained the situation to a very unhappy Lee Harvey Oswald. The tirade drew the attention of the other Cuban staff members, including the consul himself, a man named Eusebio Askew. Askew explained to Oswald that Cuba had to be very careful as to who it let into the country, and that he was...
Again, you have to think of it like this. Is Oswald crazy, or is he acting? Is he playing a role to leave an impression? Is he irate? Is he yelling at the top of his lungs in front of the staff so they'll remember, I'm Oswald, I'm upset? Okay, so is he playing a role so people will remember that, so they'll shake things up and everybody's gonna be reporting back? I mean, the embassy in Cuba, the embassy in Russia is going to be reporting up their chain of command all the way back to Moscow. This crazy person, this same guy that was living in Moscow 2 years before, in Minsk, is now down here in Mexico. What the hell's going on? And then by doing that, watching those communications, the CIA is going to know, okay, who has the power to make decisions, who's the next chain of command up, okay? That way they can figure out who in the embassy staff exactly is KGB, because the KGB is going to be making that decision, okay? So, is he doing that? Is he playing a role? I mean, I knew this kid when I was little, and he would play this game with his parents, and he learned how to push their buttons. So whenever he wanted something, he would get upset, and if he wanted something, I want this, I want that, I want this toy, I want this chocolate, I want this whatever. And most of the time he would get it because the parents knew that if they didn't give it to him, he was going to go into this tirade. Okay, and start screaming and falling down the ground and kicking and throwing things, and it was going to be a lot of drama and stress for them. And so he had trained them conditioned response. A 3-year-old had conditioned response his 30-year-old parents to give him what he wanted, or he was going to blackmail them by kicking and screaming and throwing things and pulling a temper tantrum. Now, if I'd tried that kind of stuff with my dad would have taken his belt to me, and that would have been the end of it. I never would have thought of doing that again because I would have known what would happen. But these parents, for some reason, they didn't know how to respond and to control their own child, so he controlled them. And then as soon as he got what he wanted, he would kick and scream and yell and holler and make a bunch of noise and oh my God, and then the parents were running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And what are we going to do? Here, take this, here, get this, here's the chocolate, here's the toil, calm down, you know. And then as soon as he got what he wanted, he would switch back to good little boy. Okay, everything's good, thank you, mommy, like that. So he had learned to play his role. He knew what buttons to push. He knew what to do and what to say that would get them the response he wanted. Okay? So is that what Oswald's doing? Is he throwing a tantrum? Is he pitching a fit to leave an impression to get them to communicate back to their superiors and get the information to the CIA wants? Is that what he's doing? I would say most likely yes, because it seems like to me, if you look at Oswald, he's playing these roles. Here he is on the street, passing out flyers. He's a communist, but he's not hanging out with any communists. He's not talking with any communists. He's not going to any communist meetings. but he's passing out flyers saying he's a communist. He even hired 2 other temporary guys from the unemployment office when he has no money to go down and, be background actors in his little movie for his scene that he's creating on the streets in New Orleans to create a fuss, to get in the headlines. Okay? He's doing this under orders. He's following a script, like I said. The only thing is, most actors, they have the entire script. And they can read to the end. And they go, oh, no, Captain America, snapped his fingers in front of, what was that guy's name? Thanos, and said, I am Iron Man. And then Thanos and all the enemy died. And then Captain America died. Now, I'm sure that, the guy who signed up, the actor who signed up to be Captain America in 2008, didn't have the script to 2019 to know that he was going to die. His character was going to get killed off. Okay? He didn't know that. All he did is sign up to be an actor, to play a role. Same thing with Black Widow. I'm sure that when she signed up in 2000, what was the second movie, right? Iron Man 2, 2009, 2010. She didn't know, because the script hadn't been written yet, or she hadn't seen the script, okay, that she would get killed off in order to get one of those stones, okay? So what we have here are actors that are being manipulated by directors, producers. You've got directors and producers that in their head, they've got an idea of what they want, where they want to go. They're talking to a writer to write the script a certain type of way. They've got storyboards up. You may have producers and executives that say, no, I don't like that ending. Let's change this part at the end. Okay? Or, you can go this way or you can go that way. I've read some background about Back to the Future and how they went through all these different endings and scripts and actors and stuff like that to finally get to the last product where they were at. But nobody knew in the very beginning exactly how it was going to end. Okay? And it's the same thing here. You've got people, multiple executive producers, multiple directors, multiple script writers that they're building, they're working on a consensus that eventually we're going to end up here. Just like, say, World War II. Okay? We all knew, once America got in the war, that the end of the war would end in Tokyo, in Japan, and the end of the war in Europe would end in Berlin, Germany. We all knew that. Getting from where they were at in 1941 to 1945, that was the mix. Now you can kind of get a general idea. You're going to have to go into Europe somewhere, maybe from Britain, okay, maybe from up into Italy, but eventually you're going to end up in Berlin. Same thing with Japan. You're going to have to go push them out. The Japanese are almost to Australia, so push them out of Indonesia, New Guinea. You're going to have to hit some islands along the way to get to Japan, so you can start bombing their industries, to make it harder for them to produce weapons. Have a general idea of how it's going to end, and then you're writing the script to get there. Now, there may be some disaster along the way that causes a setback. Okay? Luckily, in World War II, we didn't have too many setbacks on the Allied side. Okay? But, they didn't know about the Germans in the Battle of the Bulge, and that was kind of a setback. But even though it was kind of a setback and the Germans did advance almost into Antwerp, which was their goal, it didn't change the outcome of the war. They were still able to bring up Patton and to cut off the Germans and to push back in that little salient there and continue on their goal to get to Berlin. As a matter of fact, you see, that's where the executive producers, FDR and Stalin and Winston Churchill would meet, at different areas and get together and say, okay, this movie, we need to move it this way, and you guys agree on your side, you're going to move that way, or we're going to move this way. So this is what's happening in the JFK assassination. Okay, they've decided, I think they all decided, okay, the powers that be, the people who have power in the military, the CIA, and the government, they decided after the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of 1962 that Kennedy's got to go. Okay? And now it was just a matter of putting together where and how. Putting the pieces of this movie together. Okay? They don't know exactly where or how, but they know they're going to do it somehow. And they're looking around. They've got different options. In Back to the Future, a lot of people don't know that it was, what was the guy's name? Eric Stoltz, who originally played Marty McFly instead of, the other guy. But after a couple of days of filming, the director decided that it just wasn't working with Eric Stoltz. It just wasn't the person they were looking for. So they worked out a system with, the actor who becomes Marty McFly, because he was doing a TV show to film at night, all the night scenes first, and then when his TV show ended, they could film the day scenes, and that's what they did. And that's what we're talking about with Oswald. So you have guys in Florida, South Florida. You got this guy a couple of guys in Chicago. I'm sure there were other options they were looking at as patsies. Okay, a lot of times you don't even need to have a patsy. You could just have an assassination team and they all get away. But eventually they figured out there was no way they were going to be able to have an assassination without blaming it on someone. So they start moving Oswald around, okay, giving him assignments, painting him as this crazy person. I'm sure they didn't pull his name out of a hat. And so they move all the pieces around till they fit where they're at. And eventually, again, they don't know that everything is going to work out exactly the way it is. The Germans could have a nuclear bomb at the end and nuke the Americans on the D-Day beach. They didn't know for sure. Luckily, that didn't happen. So they got a general idea, and they tried to reduce the odds. Okay, get him to Dallas. We'll get a team there. We've already got this assassination team that's trying to kill Castro. They already hate Kennedy. We're going to take some people from there and put them into the assassination. Again, you don't have to have a lot of people that know exactly what the end game is. Again, if you've got a movie and you're trying to keep it top secret, like say you're doing Star Wars, that scene where Luke in the Empire Strikes Back, and Luke's got his arm, his hand chopped off by Darth Vader, and he's crawling out on that, whatever that tower is, and Darth Vader, says, "Here, join me, and we can defeat the Emperor." And he says, "I'll never join you. I know what you did. I know what you did to my father." I don't remember the exact lines. And Darth Vader goes, "No, I am your father." He said, "No, it can't be true." And then he jumps off the tower. You see, well, what happened is, in the script that everybody could read, because the script's used by everybody, the lighting technicians, the music guy, the music producer, everybody has to know where their parts are. You got hundreds of extras and stuff like that. So you couldn't just throw out a secret as big as that. So what they did is they changed it. In the script they gave to everyone, it said that Darth Vader said, no, Obi-Wan Kenobi killed your father. That was the script that everybody had, and that's what people thought was going to happen. But the director and one of the producers came to Luke Skywalker and said, look, this is this line now, and this is what it's really going to be when we release it in the movie. And it's going to be, I am your father. And they said, now, only we know, us two, and you know. And we're not going to tell anybody. And if it gets out, we're going to know that you told people. So don't tell nobody. Okay? So for a year, over a year, he said, he had to keep that secret. Okay? So this is what you have here in the JFK assassination. You have a very small group of people at the lower ends of the CIA, the military-industrial complex, maybe even some mid-level people in the military, the CIA. They're all ultra-conservative, anti-communist. They really believe that Kennedy doesn't know what he's doing and it's going to get us, turn us over to the communists, either by accident or by choice. Okay? So they want to get rid of him. But it only takes a few people, because like I said, even an FBI agent may not like Kennedy, may hate his policies, but he's not going to be, your average FBI or CIA agent is not going to be, as much as he hates Kennedy, is not going to be part of some damn assassination plot to kill the President of the United States. It's just not going to happen. Let's say you got 10,000 FBI agents, okay, back in 1963. I don't know how many there were. Maybe 10 of them, 15 of them would be involved, okay? Now, I would say even in New Orleans, Bannister, Shaw, Ferry, they all didn't exactly know that Kennedy was going to be killed until the end. I don't think that Shaw knew that when he was told to babysit Oswald from May to September of 1963 that Oswald was going to be the shooter, or the blame to be the shooter for killing Kennedy. Okay? I don't even know if Shaw knew that they were going to kill Kennedy. They could have told him anything. They could have told him, we're going to do something, fire some warning shots or whatever, to make it look like Kennedy's vulnerable. They're going to catch this guy who's a communist, and then Kennedy will change his policy, because it's a pro-Cuban communist, So who knows? Who knows? I mean, it could be like Hinckley, He shoots at the guy, he misses, but he gets caught. Just like Squeaky Fromm, she gets caught trying to shoot President Ford. Okay? So, only, like I said, like a movie, only the directors, the producers, the top-level guys are going to know what's going on. Everyone else is just doing their job, going along, following orders. They don't know the end game. They haven't the script, the real script, to read at the end and Kennedy was shot from the back by team number 1, and then shot from the front, from the picket fence, by team number 2. They don't know that. The least amount of people to know something, the better. Okay? Because if someone could tell you, yeah, I really hate Kennedy, that son of a bitch, I wish someone would knock his ass off. But then if they find out they're involved in it, that may weigh on them, like, what happened to Nagel, what happened to Kerry Thornley. This is what happens with Kerry Thornley, is he's going around, my impression from Garrison's statements, that he was imitating Oswald. He'd been with Oswald, he knew how he talked, they hung out together, he kind of looked like Oswald a little bit, so he could go around saying he's Oswald. Okay? And no one's going to know, Because a lot of the people he's going around saying he's Oswald has never really seen Oswald except on TV. Never in person. So this is what's happening with Kerry Thornley. He realized that he was used in the plot to kill the president. He had no idea. I guarantee you Kerry Thornley had no idea that what he was doing was going to help the president of the United States get killed. Okay? Anyway, that's just my opinion. But like I said, with that story with George Lucas and his producer and Luke Skywalker, you can keep secrets. Luke Skywalker kept it a secret. I mean, not Luke Skywalker. Mark Hamill kept it a secret for a year and a half. He couldn't tell anybody, you know. And then he said once it came out, and then he told Harrison Ford about what happened. He goes, "Well, you never told me that. Hey, kid, all that time, you know." But you can keep secrets. It's proven, you know. If you don't, and they had some kind of thing in his contract that said if he told, that he would lose a lot of money. Okay, and then you got other people that they're just not being told, or if they are told, then you know, here's a picture of your daughter going to school. Here's a picture of your mother on her way to church. We sure would hate for something bad to happen to them. You know, kids get hit by cars all the time crossing the street. You know, old people fall down the stairs and, you know, bust their back, break their neck all the time. We sure would hate that to happen to your family. That's the way it works, right there. Okay? That's how you control people. And that's what I think happened with this whole plot. The very, very small amount of people knew what was going on. There were others that were involved in the plot that kind of had an idea of what was going on but didn't know the exact ending. And there were others involved in the plot. They were just going along because they were following orders or, you know, other things like that. Again, threatening people, blackmailing people is a very, very bad way to, you know, try to control people. Because, I mean, look how many people have left the mafia from death threats and, you know, gone into the witness protection program. So the best solution is to not let anyone know exactly what the end game is, and then make them think they're doing one thing, and then you're doing something else. You see? Make them think that, oh, Obi-Wan Kenobi killed your father, but really in the end, it was, you know, I am your father. You see what I'm saying? This is how it works. All right, so we'll pick this up a little bit later. Didn't mean to rant too much, but that's just the way things go. All right, so we're back to David Atlee Phillips, also known as Maurice Bishop. And again, on the timeline, on the 23rd of September, right before Oswald goes to Mexico City, he becomes the station chief of Mexico City for Cuban and Latin American special operations. So Phillips joined the CIA as a part-time agent in 1950 in Chile, where he owned and edited the South Pacific Mail, English-language newspaper that circulated through South America and several islands in the Pacific. So you see how Gadot and him are doing almost the exact same thing. Okay? Gadot is doing this South America, Latin American news, whatever, and then David Atlee Phillips is doing exactly the same thing. All right, so he became a full-time operative in 1954 and operated a major psychological warfare campaign in Guatemala during the U.S. coup and its aftermath. He rose to the ranks to intelligence officer, chief of station, eventually chief of Western Hemisphere operations, serving primarily in Latin America, including Cuba, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic. And there you go right there. So this is going to be the CIA guy, okay, who's going to be at the top level, director, above, we'll put it here. So if you've got like George Lucas is the producer of Star Wars, you've got directors in different departments, sound, music, lighting, special effects, acting, background actors, promotions, all these different things, but they're all controlled by, you know, George Lucas. He's got a head of each of these departments, and I'm sure either daily or every other day he's meeting with all these heads during the day and saying, hey, how's our promotion going? Hey, how's the special effects going for that Death Star? And they're going to give him a report back, okay? And how's the dailies on the last shooting? And do we need to change the script here? Well, maybe we should change it there. And you see what I'm saying? So that's what he's doing. And the same thing that Phillips would be doing. He would have different heads of different departments for special operations in Cuba, in Mexico, in the Dominican Republic. And he would have these different people, and then underneath him they'd have a team of people that would go out and be looking to recruit new agents. They're looking to gather intelligence information and bring back. And that's what he's doing. He's running all this, though, out of Mexico City instead of out of D.C., which you're not going to have as much flexibility. That's why he's running it out of Mexico City. So Mexico City seems to be a big CIA control office for Latin America there. That makes sense, though. It says, while investigating Lee Harvey Oswald's possible ties to certain pro- and anti-Castro radical groups around the time of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, an HSC staff investigator, Gaten Fonzi, reported being told by an anti-Castro paramilitary organization, Alpha 66 founder Antonio Veciana, that Veciana arrived for a meeting in Dallas, Texas with Phillips, and Lee Harvey Oswald was there, finishing his own conversation in the hallway with Phillips. The HSCA investigator claimed Veciana knew Phillips as Maurice Bishop, after one former CIA case officer who also had been assigned to JM Wave Station in Miami stated to investigators that Phillips had been known to use the alias. The commission subpoenaed Veciana to testify on Phillips as Bishop. Veciana stated twice under oath that Phillips was not Bishop. Interesting. Yeah. To protect your ass so you don't get killed. All right, hold on one second. All right, it says, in 2014, at a conference named the Warren Report in the JFK Assassination, 5 Decades of Significant Disclosures, Veciana reversed his previous statements, asserting unequivocally, albeit not under oath, that he believed that the agent he knew as Bishop had in fact been David Atlee Phillips. Again, you're trying to protect your own ass, because at the time that the HSC committee was around, David Atlee Phillips was still alive. Okay? So if you can kill the President of the United States, you can definitely kill someone much lower than him, okay? So Veciana was not stupid. Matter of fact, Veciana actually did get shot in the head in Miami, okay? Of course, assassins don't leave a calling card and say, here, we were trying to kill you on behest of the CIA. But he got the message to be quiet. Conspiracy allegations and lawsuit in their 1980 book, Death in Washington, authors Donald Freed and Fred Landis charged that the CIA was involved in the 1973 Chilean coup d'etat and the 1976 assassination of Orlando Leader. The authors specifically named Phillips as being involved in a cover-up of the assassination and reiterated Fonzi's claim that Phillips served as Oswald's case officer while using the alias Maurice Bishop. In 1982, Freed and Landis and the publisher were named in a $230 million libel suit by Phillips and the AFIO. A settlement was reached in 1986, which Phillips received a retraction and an unspecified amount of money. Phillips donated these procedures to the AFIO. This is the American Foreign Intelligence Officers, for the purpose of creating legal defense fund for American intelligence officers who felt they were being victims of libel. So, you notice it doesn't say that Freed and Landis paid him the money. Okay. Most likely what happened is that you have a liability insurance bond, okay, company that was being paid by the publisher, okay? And they advised the publisher to make this go away, just to give him a certain amount of money, $500,000, whatever, and retract it, and that would make it go away, because we were tying up all kinds of, funds and legal expenses and things like that in court time. So that's probably what happened. But I'm sure that if you ask Donald Freed and Fred Landis, they would probably still stick to their story. Again, we don't have back then they didn't have the information we have now. Okay? That story, everybody always says, hey, if I only knew then what I knew now. And it's the same thing with the JFK assassination. They were going to keep these damn documents locked up till, 75 years? So 1963 plus 75 plus one more year, because it's 70, it would have been 64. So let's see, 1964 plus 75. We would have been waiting to the year 2039, still another 16 years from now, when everybody is dead, okay, that was involved. All the guilty party would be dead, okay. If we had waited, we would have had to wait another 16 years from now. If it wasn't for the JFK film that came out in 1991-92. And then all that information, all the documents were supposed to be released by 2017. But still, even today, in 2023, there's over 10,000 documents. There's not even millions like there were before. There's over 10,000 documents still not released by the current president, Joe Biden. And you got to ask yourself, what kind of fucking paperwork that, and the only reason that it wouldn't be released is that if it would endanger the life of someone or expose agents from that time or methods and means. And you got to wonder, who the hell's still alive after, let's just take a look here, 2023 minus 1963. After 60 years, okay, so say they went in to the CIA right out of college, at the youngest, they would be 82 years old. And there's not a lot of 82-year-old people still around. So how many CIA mole asset spies in the Soviet Union that are 82 years old or older that are still alive, that they're keeping 10,000 documents to keep them from getting killed? I'm sure by this time they would prefer to be killed than to be wetting their pants and shitting their pants at 82 years old in some damn hospital somewhere or nursing home. But again, the only reason they would be protecting those documents because it links them back to show that people inside the agency were responsible and inside the government were responsible for killing the President of the United States. That's the only reason. It's the only reason. Again, like I said, you're not going to have any documents out there that say, hey, we did it. It was me, him, and Joe and Bob, and we did it on this date. We planned it on this date. We got the weapons on this date. We hired these guys for the hit team. We paid the money from this Mexican bank account. And this guy in the station chief in Mexico City helped us plan the whole damn thing with Howard Hunt. You're just not going to see those paperwork, like I said. Anyway, so keep going. It says, after the death of former CIA agent Watergate figure E. Howard Hunt in 2007, St. John Hunt and David Hunt revealed that their father had recorded several claims about himself and others being involved in a conspiracy to assassinate the President of the United States, JFK. In April 5th, 2007 issue of Rolling Stone, St. John Hunt detailed a number of individuals implicated by his father, including Phillips, as well as Lyndon Johnson, Cord Meyer, David Sanchez Morales, Frank Sturgis, William Harvey, and an assassin he termed the French gunman Grassy Knoll, who many presume to be Lucien Sarti. The two sons allege that the father cut the information from his memoirs, American Spy, by Secret History and the CIA and Watergate and Beyond, to avoid possible perjury charges. Hunt's widow and other children told the Los Angeles Times that the two sons took advantage of Hunt's lucidity by coaching him, exploiting him from the financial gain. The newspaper said it examined the materials offered by the sons to support the story and found them to be inconclusive. Now let's unpack that quite a bit. So E. Howard Hunt sent tapes to his son when he was on his deathbed in 2007. And then his son came and said, hey, what does all this mean? And so, going roundabout without implicating himself, okay, because even after he's dead, somebody can still come and sue his estate and take all the money away from his children, okay? Whatever money there would be. So, he implicates everybody else except himself and says, oh, I knew about it, I was a bench warmer, but I didn't participate. Okay, even though St. John Hunt says there's a picture of his father in Dallas with the same trench coat that he always wore and the same fucking hat, right there on the corner of Elm and Houston. Okay, it's interesting that he mentions Lyndon Johnson and Cord Meyer. Now, Cord Meyer was a protege of Lyndon Johnson. A lot of people don't know this, that Cord Meyer, okay, was formerly married to Mary Pinchot Meyer, okay, and then they got a divorce because she supposedly was having an affair with JFK, and, just comes down to simple, Johnson using a former CIA guy to kill the president who was snooking his wife, okay, just basically spousal jealousy to motivate him to kill the President of the United States. I want you to kill the JFK because he's a communist, and oh, by the way, he's stooking your wife. Well, that's a pretty damn good reason, okay? David Sanchez Morales, Frank Sturgis were all involved in Watergate, okay? It all goes back to Nixon. Nixon was part of Operation 40. Operation 40 was this assassination team that was trying to kill Castro. All they did was turn their guns instead of Castro and killed Kennedy instead. And like I said, we're going to find out all these people involved. Of course, Johnson, Cord Meyer, Sanchez, Sturgis, and Harvey were not there shooting the guns. They hired other people. These Cubans, these white mercenaries at the lower ends of the CIA so they could have deniability. Okay? But they all show up again. They're all, David Sanchez Morales, Frank Sturgis, they're all getting busted at Watergate. And, Nixon's getting caught on tape saying, hey, we got to shut this down or it's going to open up that damn Cuban Bay of Pigs shit. And that was code word for the assassination of Kennedy. Because Kennedy didn't want to support the Cubans at the Bay of Pigs. And the Cubans blamed Kennedy for their operation failing. I believe that the CIA set the Cubans up to fail, but not sending enough people. Therefore, they could force Kennedy, who was a brand new president. This is like April of 1961. Kennedy, just got inaugurated just a few months before, so they sucker punched him in, okay, to trick him. Hey, you got to support these guys on the beach. Send in the Marines, And the same thing they tried to do in 1962, a year and a half later, in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay? No. Don't boycott. Don't blockade Cuba. Send in the Marines. We got to take out Castro. But, JFK wasn't stupid. He knew that if he sent in the Marines, that the Russians would have launched their missiles and, hit a large portion of the United States, and there would be a massive nuclear war against Russia, and the United States. And then they try to do it again. This is why they're painting Oswald as a communist. Okay? They got him down in Mexico City. They got, David Atlee Phillips, his handler, who's head of Cuban operations, Latin American operations, sends Oswald from Dallas down to down to Mexico City, stir up the shit. Say you're Oswald, say you're a pro-communist, you want to get through Cuba into Soviet Union, all that stuff doesn't make any fucking sense. And they're going to paint Oswald as this crazy communist. And therefore, when Oswald gets caught or killed, they're going to lay the blame at the feet of Cuba. Oswald was pro-Cuba. He was with this Fair Play for Cuba committee. He tried to get into Cuba from Mexico City. He said he was a communist. Oh, by the way, he was sleeping with the head of the Cuban section there, Sylvia Duran. So they were trying to force, again, Johnson, who wants to be president, but now they're trying to force Johnson, the new president, sucker punch him into going to war against and invading Cuba by laying the trail of the assassination at the feet of Castro. Okay? You're painting this guy, you're following this script. It's a false script, but nobody knows exactly what the script was, and nobody knew exactly how it was going to end. See, a lot of people in the CIA and a lot of people in the military thought that they could sucker punch, just like they tried to sucker JFK into invading Cuba. They tried to sucker Lyndon Johnson into invading Cuba to avenge Kennedy's death. Johnson wouldn't fall for it, and he tried to shut down a lot of these anti-Castro operations. It's too damn dangerous. Johnson knew they had tactical nukes and artillery nukes still in Cuba, and that the Marines would be vaporized on the beach. Okay? But anyway, Cord Meyer, his wife, was dropping acid and smoking pot with JFK in the White House. Probably a good damn reason to kill him, right? Or at least organize or get a hit team to go kill him, even though Cord Meyer and his wife were either separated or just recently divorced. And guess what happens to his wife a year later? As she's walking from Georgetown, where all these little spies lived, she's walking along the Potomac River and gets shot and killed, execution style, in the head. Apparently Kennedy must have told her something, or she knew something, and then she was killed. They tried to blame this black man who was found fishing down in that area, and he was acquitted. That same day, or maybe the next day, her sister was in Japan and was calling back to the neighbors to find out what happened. Her neighbor was Ben Bradley, who becomes the editor-in-chief of the Washington Post, which busted, Nixon in 1973, 72, 73 in the Watergate scandal. But Ben Bradley had been one of these, part of this little Georgetown elite. They hobnobbed with the other intelligence community, and, he reported back and forth to them. But, so, Mary Pinchot Meyer's sister calls from Japan, say, hey, what happened to my sister? How did she get killed? They're talking to her on the phone. She goes, well, can you go to her art studio? Okay, she has this house that she rented, but she had an art studio in the neighbor's yard, behind the neighbor's fence there. And inside the art studio, she kept a journal of all her interactions with Kennedy and all these things that she pillow talked, that she found out. So Ben Bradley and his wife, because they were friends with Mary Pinchot Meyer and her sister, go over to the studio, and as they're opening the door in the studio, guess who they find in the studio? Jesus James Angleton, head of counterintelligence in the CIA, had broken into Mary Pinchot Meyer's studio and had found the diary, and then ran off through the back door and ran away. And they knew who he was, because they're all part of that same Georgetown intelligence clique. Okay, all the wives played cards and went shopping together, and all the guys hung out, played cards, and watched football and shit together. Okay? But apparently, so what that tells you is that Jesus James Angleton, okay, was wiring Ben Bradley's phone, or at least listening in on the conversations. That's how he found out about the diary. Okay? So that tells you that either Jesus James Angleton was involved in the assassination, or he was trying to cover up any trails that would lead back to anyone inside the CIA from being involved in this. And if you look on the map, where she's killed at is almost directly across the river from where the Langley headquarters of the CIA is located. So it wouldn't take much for them to send an assassin over there to kill her. But anyway, let's see. We'll keep going here. Oh, we're almost done. So E. Howard Hunt, of course, shows up in the Watergate scandal. Also, Frank Sturgis shows up in the Watergate scandal. I've looked on Google Maps, and you can see the address where Howard Hunt died or was living in Miami. You can see the address where Frank Sturgis was living, and David Sanchez Morales, and they're all in the same damn neighborhood. They're good buddies, okay? And the reason why E. Howard Hunt gets caught is because he was the radio guy across from the Watergate that told the burglars to hide. The police are here. They found you out. Go hide. And they got caught. And eventually, you know, these guys talked. The Watergate burglars talked, and they gave up E. Howard Hunt. Now, St. John Hunt says that night, okay, of the Watergate burglary that the burglars got caught, his dad and him weren't on good speaking terms because he was a hippie, loser, not going to join the CIA and follow his dad's footsteps, wasn't athletic because he had a bad foot and leg and stuff like that. But his dad came home and told him to get his clothes on and come down to the basement, and that he needed his help. And his dad never asked him for anything. His dad saw him as a loser. He thought of himself as a loser. And so for his dad to ask for his help, it must have been something very important. He gets down there. They got all the radios. They got all the electronic equipment they're using for the break-in. The bugs, everything. They got it. Out on a table right there. His dad starts hammering shit, breaking things up, putting it into a box or a bag. They put it into the back of a car, drive around Washington, find a bridge near the Potomac River, and dump everything into this Potomac River. So he helped his dad dispose of, electronic surveilling devices. They were trying to surveil the Democratic headquarters to find out any information, any dirt that they could use against the Democrats. E. Howard Hunt eventually gets caught, goes to jail. St. John Hunt, had his problems with drugs, but eventually they got together and said these things. Now, when E. Howard Hunt's in jail, he makes almost a threat to the president through one of his aides that, hey, we took care of you, and we're trying to keep it at us and not let them link it back to you, so you need to take care of us, or me and my family. Okay? And so what that meant is that you need to provide legal defense and money to help out my family while all this is going on, to help me out, get me out of jail, stuff like that. And very mysteriously, his wife was flying to Chicago, I believe, and she had some information that she was supposed to give someone, and her whole plane crashed and killed everyone on board. And within 15 minutes, there were FBI agents everywhere. Now, the FBI agent's office was like 45 minutes away. But they went through everything, and they found her her bag that she was carrying with her on the plane when she crashed. They found her dead body. And inside her bag, there was something like $100,000 in cash. Plus other evidence. What that was, we'll never know. So, E. Howard Hunt's wife gets murdered by the President of the United States to hide his complacency inside the break-in in Watergate, but also, most likely, in the assassination of Kennedy. Because, if put under enough pressure, E. Howard Hunt probably would have gave up the president about the assassination of Kennedy. And this is why they're saying, we got to shut this investigation down because it's going to break out this whole, Bay of Pigs fiasco. That's what he meant. Because, the president's not stupid. He's recording the conversation. He knows he's recording the conversation. So he's not going to say on his own recordings, he never thought that anyone else would get the recordings except himself. But he was forced by the Supreme Court to hand over his tapes to the Congress. But he knew in his own recordings he wasn't going to confess to the president's murder of JFK. And think about it. Here's the Nixon in 1973, 72, 73, thinking he should have been president back in 1960 and not, 1961 to 1969, not that damn Kennedy, not that loser Johnson. It should have been me there, right? We wouldn't have been in all this mess in Vietnam. Anyway, so, make it what you will. David Atlee Phillips, head of the Mexico City CIA station, which basically was the CIA's control of every operation that was happening in Latin America, ran through the CIA station in Mexico City. It wasn't running out of the embassy, I guarantee you that. They had another office building someplace else, had a front company, maybe the U.S. wholesale meat company across from the Venezuelan embassy. But that's how those things work, okay? Anyway, so we'll get back into more of this tomorrow. Let's see. He did some interesting books, 25 Years of Peculiar Service. Now see, a lot of people don't understand how people can be in the CIA and do illegal things and things that they would never do today or would be very upset if their children did them. And the thing you have to understand is we were in a death struggle, I guess you could say, with the Soviets. At least that's what we thought. It was either our way or their way. And so, if you're a dedicated CIA officer who maybe was in the military, fought for your country, and you know how bad things can get, you would do anything for your family. You would do anything for your country. I mean, think about it. If someone broke into your house and put a knife to your family's throat, you would do anything to kill that person and save your family, right? This is the same thing, but on a worldwide scale. This is why you can have perfectly logical, educated men that will go along with killing hundreds of people and think it's in the service of their country to protect them. Right or wrong, however you think about it, you can sit on your moral high horse and say, oh, they were just... if I was that, I would have refused the order. Well, yeah, you would have refused the order and somebody else would have stepped up and done it. There's always going to be someone that's going to follow that order. Same thing with the fucking Nazis. If you had put down your gun and said, no, I'm not going to kill these Jews, well, they probably would have been gone to jail or arrested or killed for not following an order, and then they would have found some other guy that would have done it. Okay? But they're justifying we were in a war, a Cold War with the Soviets. They were going to roll over us, Khrushchev said. And so their mentality was anything. I'll do anything for my family, for my country. Nothing is out of bounds. And then if you take that attitude and you take it a little further, that Kennedy is either ignorant or he's pro-communist or he doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and you have that same attitude, you do anything to protect your country from the enemy, then Kennedy becomes the enemy, and therefore the next logical step is to eliminate Kennedy. That's the way they're thinking about it, okay? But you only need a few people doing that, thinking that way. 25, 30 at the most. Everybody else just following orders. You know, how many times you hear those damn Nazis, you know, well, why did you put babies and old ladies in the gas chambers? I was just following orders, you know. So, again, people, especially when you tell them that it's your family, you know, it's either us or them, they'll do anything. Most people would, you know. We can all sit on our high horses and say, no, we wouldn't have done that, but if there's a difference between that and your family surviving or eating or whatever, you'd be surprised what you would do. And like from that line from that movie, Munich, and Abner at the end, he said, you know, his Abner's handler in the Mossad says, do you really think that I would harm your family? And after killing so many people and having so many people executed and murdered and blown up and shot and all this stuff, Abner looks him right in the eyes and said, I believe anybody is capable of anything. So, you know, the glory, the polish was gone off his, you know, fantasy, what he thought being in the intelligence was all about, that he believed anybody would do anything to protect their family or protect their country or whatever. And this is what we have here. I'm not excusing David Atlee Phillips, but if you look at it from his point of view and Howard Hunt at the time, this is probably their reasoning. This is how you reason killing people. This is how you reason bombing the hell out of a firebombing and killing 10,000 people in Germany, mostly civilians. This is how you reason firebombing Yokohama and killing 100,000 people in one night. This is how you reason dropping a bomb on Nagasaki and killing 85, 100,000 people, mostly women and children. Anyway, time's way over. I gotta go. All right, take care. Bye.